Hello, Swifties, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 4 of the Swift Boys podcast. Today we are talking about the lead single and only music video off the Folklore album so far, Cardigan. Swifties, you would not believe how hard it was for me to get Captain Natty over here. He has been putting this off for what seems like weeks. His dedication to the podcast is subpar, and I would like you to tell him in the comments that he is being a bad co-host.
So I was gone. We recorded the day before I went out of town for a week. I've been got back for 3 days. So I feel like that's a reasonable amount of time to then record again.
Swifties, I consider myself lucky we're even recording today. I had to ask him 1,000 times during work today. I had to basically beg him to come over to record. But all that's in the past. We're here. We're recording. We're talking about Cardigan. And our fans will not be disappointed that we're not missing our weekly marker. That's another thing. In the previous episode, he was like, fans, we're recording every single week. We're not going to be doing monthly things anymore. We're going to be on top of things. We wouldn't have been on top of things if it wasn't for me. That's all I'm saying.
Well, speaking of fans, it'd be nice if we had a few in this room because your house is hot.
That's right, Swifties. Seattle is under a heat wave right now. And to make matters worse, my townhouse is getting painted. And the painters covered all of the windows with
like saran wrap?
Some kind of fabric. I guess that's what they do. But there's no ventilation, no flow coming in and out. So you may see us sweating today. It's not because we're nervous. It's because we're hot. So yup. Swifties. You may have seen... Oh, couple housekeeping items first. I didn't get to tell my story last week about why I'm called the Chemist. So Captain Natty and the Chemist were the two hosts.
Wait, have you ever referred to yourself as the Chemist on the podcast?
I referred to myself as the Chemist last time, just offhand. I didn't explain it at all. So I wanted to take a step back and tell the Swifties why I'm doing that.
I don't know if I'm going to get used to calling you the Chemist on the podcast, though. I'm just going to say that right now. I don't think I can get used to that.
Yeah, I just felt like I needed a nickname because Captain Natty and Scott just didn't...
Scotty.
Captain Natty and Scotty, yeah.
Scotty and Natty.
Oh, we'll see. We'll see.
Captain Natty and Lieutenant Scotty.
Swifties,
yep.
Swifties, tell us what you think. But I did want people to start calling me the Chemist just because I am very exceptionally good at dialing in the pH balance on our new hot tub. Swifties, we just got a nice inflatable hot tub for the backyard, and I have been in charge of getting the pH and the alkalinity and the chlorine to just the right balance. Been putting in the various chemicals, and so I've been insisting that people call me the Chemist. So please, in all further comments on our various social medias, refer to me as the Chemist.
Yeah, don't talk to me, though, until your boss calls you the Chemist on a work email, because I've had my managers and boss call me Captain Natty on work emails. That's
right.
It's an exciting time.
I take credit for that because I was the one who told our entire office that we have a podcast.
I'm not the one that would be telling people about this, but Scott just feels the need to literally be half a beer in and then tell everyone. Actually, he needs to be 0 beers in and he'll tell everyone.
No, yeah, I would tell people about my podcast at the drop of a hat. Oh, Swifties. Cardigan, as you know, is part of the love triangle of folklore. Captain Natty, do you want to tell us about the love triangle of folklore?
Yeah, so Folklore, right? Taylor Swift's new album, her first album that is predominantly not about her own life. It's about her looking at things from other people's perspectives.
That's right.
In different situations. And I would say the most unique part of the album is this love triangle that she's included, where she has a song on the album from each person in a love triangle's perspective. Cardigan, the lead single from the album, the music video, is one of the songs in this love triangle, the other two being August and Betty.
So do we know whose perspective Cardigan is from?
Cardigan is from Betty's perspective.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, because Betty is from James' perspective.
Right.
Yeah, I think that threw you off there. I was like, wait, there's a song called Betty and it's not from Betty's perspective?
Right,
no,
that did throw me off.
James' perspective about Betty, and then you have Cardigan from Betty's perspective, and then August is from a nameless person's perspective.
Okay.
But it's whoever James had the summer fling with that then caused the rift between Betty and James, that then had James going up to her porch in Betty and asking for forgiveness. And then now Cardigan is Betty looking back 20 years later on that time, thinking about the love gained and lost. And the big open-ended question is, did they like that's the big open-ended question that Taylor Swift leaves on the album. It's not answered in any of the songs. Is did they actually get back together after that or no? It's not made clear in any of the songs.
Wow, maybe we'll get a Cardigan Part 2 or a Folklore 2.
Yeah, maybe.
To continue these stories. Yeah, I hadn't quite wrapped my head around that whole plot yet, so thanks for explaining that to me. This particular song does have a self-contained story in it.
Correct.
The music video has a very clear plot, which was explained a little bit by the footnotes version of the music video.
Yeah, Taylor just released a footnotes version, which is literally just the music video, but then with like a text box at the bottom with some notes, which were very interesting to see. But she basically did our work for us.
Right.
She like explained the imagery in the music video. Basically, starting with, when Taylor enters the piano and goes into the magical world. It's like the beginning of the magical beginning of a relationship, right? And then she ends up in this like ocean.
Right,
which
and that's
like,
after they break up.
Right, the growing apart part of the relationship, and then coming back and putting on the cardigan. Still wet, still bearing the marks of that past heartbreak. And
the music video did point out some Easter eggs that I personally never would have caught.
I wouldn't notice. Yeah, I mean, like unless you have like super HD 4K, like,
right? Unless
whatever.
You can zoom in and
right.
Enhance.
It's like they pointed out that like the clock was at 1 and 3 per 13, but like literally couldn't even tell it was a clock on the wall.
Right. There's no way anybody's catching that. But we did get some nice behind the scenes things. Like since this was entirely recorded during the pandemic, everybody had to stay apart during the recording of this music video. So Taylor had to wear her own clothes and do her own hair and makeup.
Right, and because this album was so, last minute, I guess. Like, it was secret.
Yeah,
she didn't market it at all. It didn't announce it until the day it was released. No one on set heard the music. Like, she was wearing an earpiece, and she was the only one actually hearing the song. And that's why she's the only person in this music video, because, she didn't have other people around for social distancing. Mm-hmm. But it worked out. I think it works out very well.
Pretty wild.
It was, all things considered, a very good music video.
Right.
And even better when you consider... everything, all the obstacles, basically.
Yeah, it's virtually homemade. Like, I know there's a team of people on it, but it
homemade for Taylor, she can hire the best people in the business. But, like, still, it's basic, yeah.
All right, well, let's dive into the lyrics. Was there anything else I needed to say? Oh, I guess we can save it for the end. But remind me, Swifties, I want to talk about some reviews. We want to read at least one review.
Yeah, we've had some fun reviews of the podcast the last... couple weeks.
Yeah, we get too many to read them all, but there's one in particular that I wanted to read aloud. But for now, let us dive into the pod, because we know you want us to get to the meat of the episode. You don't want us dilly-dallying forever. So let me go ahead and read verse 1 of Cardigan. Vintage tea, brand new phone, high heels on cobblestones. When you are young, they assume you know nothing. Sequin smile, black lipstick, sensual politics. When you are young, they assume you know nothing.
So, actually, a surprise right off the bat for me. When I heard vintage tea, I didn't realize it was T-E-E. I thought it was T-E-A. I literally didn't realize it until just now when I'm looking at the lyrics on my phone.
Yeah, she's talking about a t-shirt.
A vintage t-shirt. That makes more sense. I was like, what's vintage tea? I was like, I guess it's some like... that's cool to high schoolers. Just I don't even know.
That's funny.
Like, I don't drink tea, so yeah, that's...
Yeah, we're Americans, so we don't drink tea.
We throw tea into the ocean. No.
Right. I do have to actually mention that because we often just assume that all of our followers are going to be Americans, so we might even say things that are like something seems obvious to us because it's American, but we gotta.
So the tea joke is because of the Boston Tea Party in 1775, when the colonists threw the British tea into the Boston Harbor because they were getting taxed without representation.
When we declared our independence from the evil British Empire.
Anyway, back to Taylor Swift.
So I was reading Genius.com, and they had an interesting interpretation of this verse. They said that each of these images is going through a different phase in Taylor's career. For example, vintage tea, brand new phone evokes the hipster image of red. High heels on cobblestone, that sounds a bit like New York, maybe referring to 1989. Sequin smile, black lipstick, that sounds a lot like the Reputation era. And then sensual politics brings us into the Lover area. So perhaps this verse is going through these phases in Taylor's life.
So I agree that those images can each be referencing those eras. I don't know. It seems like a good enough connection that it's probably intentional, right? It does seem like that doesn't seem to be an accident, but this song isn't about Taylor, right? The point is this song, we know for sure, Taylor has said it, this is part of the love triangle. This is not about her life at all. To me, this song is, Betty 20 years later looking back at all these things that she thought was cool in high school, right? When you're young, they assume you know nothing. Like, oh, you're into vintage t-shirts and brand new phones, high heel. Oh, which is funny. I guess the song is set in like the 2030s because they wouldn't have brand new phones 20 years ago. I guess you could have like a brand new Nokia phone. But
2030s. What makes you think this is 2030s?
Because it's 20 years ago.
Right? Oh, this is looking back.
Right, it's looking back, but like brand new phone. I mean, smartphones. I guess it could have been.
Maybe it's like a brand new rotary phone.
Yeah, a brand new Nokia. Well, not rotary. What? 20 years ago was 2000, Scott. It wasn't like the ancient times.
So, but then they also talk about like the 1920s in this album. Maybe that's unrelated, but also like the last great American dynasty. Maybe that's also unrelated, but that gives me the feeling that we're talking about like 100 years ago.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't think Taylor was really thinking about it that hard. Basically, I think the point of this verse is setting up, the image of this girl 20 years later looking back at a different time, a younger time in her life, 20 years ago, listing off things, the one repeated line in this verse, when you are young, they assume you know nothing. Kind of referencing, when you're older, you look back at those things that you liked when you were in high school and you're like, well, that was kind of stupid. Like, that was a phase. When you're young, they assume you know nothing. Like, you didn't really know, what was, what you should have been in putting your time into, putting your efforts into. We're going to see later in the song, the repeated image, when you were young, they assume you know nothing, but I knew you.
Yes.
Right. So like reflecting, oh yeah, okay, I didn't have the full grasp of the world yet in high school, obviously. Right. But I did know you well enough to know how this relationship was going to go.
She did know that she was in love.
And that, there would be these ups and downs in the relationship.
Yeah, she saw the future. She knew that this high school relationship wasn't going to be the one that she married. Although, first album Taylor may have thought so. Debut single, or self-titled Taylor was a bit more hopeful that a high school relationship would be the end. One more thing in this first verse, these high heels on cobblestones. So cobblestones comes up again in Betty.
In Betty, yeah.
Is there anything particular about cobblestones?
No, I think so. In all of the songs, Taylor leaves hints that the songs are related. Like each song has some images in it that, if you've listened to the entire album more than once, you'll be like, oh wait, that's referencing that. So even if she didn't say, this is a love triangle, you should be able to figure it out. Right. That's the funny thing about this album is it's the most unannounced album that she's ever done. Obviously, she announced it like 24 hours before it came out. But then she just explained all the Easter eggs.
Yeah. She did a little too much of our work for us.
Yeah. She was like, well, I didn't give them she didn't have a month to hype up all these Easter eggs, or a year, or however long she normally takes to release an album to hype up all these Easter eggs. She's just like, I'll just tell them about them. There probably are more that we haven't even found yet. Yeah,
there's definitely still stuff to
This is definitely the most work that Taylor's done for her fans, which I think is interesting.
Right.
I don't know.
So then we get the chorus. Taylor says, in the voice of Betty.
Yes.
She says, but I knew you, dancing in your Levi's, drunk under a streetlight. I knew you, hand under my sweatshirt, baby kiss it better. So we're getting a little frisky here, Swifties.
Okay.
Captain Natty does not like it one bit.
No eye contact until marriage, boys and girls.
Yeah, especially in the 1920s. So.
Okay, so this is where this song is so great. At least initially, this album's only been out for a few weeks. We'll see how, as I continue to listen to it, where all these songs end up on my final rankings. This is definitely top tier on the album, I think, because of all the imagery and specific images in the album. And it reminds me a bit of All Too Well. And that's why All Too Well is so good, is because it brings up all these specific images from relationships. And Taylor's kind of doing the same thing here.
Yes.
And so this is kind of like the start of it. We're thinking back, it's like, I remember it all too well. Here, Betty saying, I knew you. So again, thinking back after a relationship with its ups and downs in a similar vein as All Too Well. The first image, looking back at the good times, the way All Too Well starts as well. Yep. But I knew you dancing in your Levi's, drunk under a streetlight. So you can see these high schoolers out late at night drinking. They shouldn't have been.
Oh, another thing that we need to explain to our international Swifties is in the United States, you can only drink at the age of 21. So our German Swifties may be like, well, what's wrong with that? They're in high school. They should be drinking beer. Not here. You're not allowed to.
Yep. And you're also not allowed to kiss in high school. So the second line, I'm just...
Yeah, I mean, maybe according to your parents.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, so you have these two images of basically being drunken in love in high school.
Yes. And then getting a little frisky,
kissing, yeah.
Possibly due to the drunkenness.
Right. Yeah, we don't know.
Or at least helped by it. Baby, kiss it better. That's kind of like...
It? Do I want to know?
That's not where I was going with this.
Well,
I was thinking more like... so this is... Let's see if this cannot get weird. But I was thinking like a little kid scrapes their knee, their mom kisses it to make it better.
That's definitely not where this is going.
No, I mean, like, let's just think of it in a way that's not like Oedipus complex.
No, that's not what I'm thinking at all. But I don't think, like, yeah.
I think like maybe she has an emotional wound or a physical, probably emotional wound, and he's kissing it to make it better.
No,
kissing
I think this is purely physical. It's high school. It's purely physical. Like, I'm not gonna say what it is. I don't think it's that weird.
I don't think that's where she was going. I don't think she's making a reference to...
No, I don't think she is either. But it's like, when you're like, okay, do I have to explain what making out is?
But why is that kiss it better?
Kiss it better? I don't know.
Kiss my lips better?
Well, I mean, but you like kiss their face or like...
No, I think
other
it's
things.
Kiss it to make it feel better. All right, Swifties. Luckily, our camera turned off to cut off that awkward conversation.
Moving on.
So, yeah, good timing on the camera's part. Now we get a refrain. Usually we don't get refrains in Taylor Swift songs.
She usually refrains from putting refrains in her songs.
Although this may just be... Well, so I guess what's the difference between a refrain and a pre-chorus? I don't know. Is it just that the refrain comes after the chorus?
No, a refrain wouldn't be... Right, like a pre-chorus comes pre-chorus.
Right.
This refrain is coming after.
But is that really the only difference? Just that it comes after the chorus?
I don't know the difference, but it's definitely not a pre-chorus because it's not a pre-chorus.
That's fair. But, okay, whatever. we don't have to go into terminology here. Okay, the refrain says... And when I felt like I was an old cardigan under someone's bed, you put me on and said I was your favorite.
So you can see this is like, high school. She probably got out of a relationship. She was feeling low. She was feeling like nothing was going for her.
Right.
She had nothing good in the world.
We've all been there, Swifties.
She was just like, life can't get any worse and it can't get any better.
She
felt like she was a cardigan under someone's bed, you might say.
Yes.
And then going along with that image... James picked up the cardigan and put it on and said that it was his favorite. And now they're in a relationship and they're happy. And
they're in that magical Narnia zone that she enters.
But not Narnia after the witch was defeated.
I haven't seen Narnia in a long time.
Seen, you mean read? It's a book.
I haven't read the book. I only saw the movie. So Swifties films are a thing that... I'm just kidding. All right, so I think that's all we have to say for the refrain. Verse 2.
Well, I guess another part of the refrain, I was going to differentiate from pre-chorus, but pre-choruses are also repeated. But this comes up again and again, and it has slightly different meanings each time because it's used, as Taylor's talking about the relationship. As the relationship progresses, she brings up this refrain in different contexts, and so that changes the meaning.
Okay.
So that's something to...
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to that explanation because I didn't notice that there were different meaning between the exact same refrain. So verse 2 says, a friend to all is a friend to none. Chase two girls, lose the one. When you are young, they assume you know nothing. So this repeated line definitely does change meaning throughout the song.
What, the when you're young, they assume you know nothing? Well, it's just referring to different things.
But it's the same line and it's totally different here.
Right. Context determines meaning.
Right. Yeah. I'm just saying it's the same as the refrain in that respect.
Right.
So in this case, she's saying that James assumes that she's so dumb and young that she won't notice that James is two-timing her with another girl.
Right.
A friend to all is a friend to none.
You can't have it all, is basically what this is saying.
Right.
Right. You can't be friends with everyone because you're going to be spread too thin. It's just not realistic. You chase two girls, you're inevitably going to lose one unless you're... I don't know. Never mind.
And even if you can get away with it, it's not the right thing to do.
Anyway, this is a weird... If you can't tell... Swifties, if you've been listening to our podcast, we've talked about this. We have normal recordings on Saturdays, and then we have other recordings. It's a Tuesday night.
It also depends what's in the cup, Swifties.
Yeah. I'm sober because I have to work tomorrow. Scott also has to work tomorrow.
I have to work tomorrow.
I know.
All right. The chorus says, "But I knew you, playing hide and seek and giving me your weekends. I knew you, your heartbeat on the high line, once in 20 lifetimes. I."
So again, the chorus has that continued, repeated line, "But I knew you," and then new images each time after those repeated lines showing the progression of the relationship. So here now, after the initial phase, into like the deep, like who knows how long it had been, we don't know. Couldn't have been that long there in high school, but having these experiences together, playing hide and seek, giving me your weekend, so spending time together, again showing the passage of time, and then this interesting kind of little play on words, your heartbeat on the high line, once in 20 lifetimes. So this is where, with that once in 20 lifetimes, referring to the 20 years that have passed.
Is that what that means?
Well, I don't think it's directly referring to that, but I think Taylor said that it's 20 years later.
Okay.
So this would be the indication in the song. This is the only time it mentions 20.
Right.
So, but I think it also is referring to that feeling, the heartbeat on the high line, being those feelings that of being together, being close, falling in love, that do feel like it's not even just once in a lifetime; it's once in 20 lifetimes. It's so rare.
Yeah, so that's the surface level reading. Is
rare.
That this particular feeling is not even everybody gets this.
It was rare. I was there. I remember it all too well. Actually, yeah. The more we think about this, there are a lot of loose similarities to All Too Well. It's a similarly structured song for sure, lyrically at least.
Right. One more reference to the United States. The High Line is a place in Manhattan, New York. It's on the west side, so that's what Taylor's referring to there. So apparently Betty and James and the other girl all live in New York.
So I didn't realize the High Line was referring to that in Manhattan. So I was actually in Glacier National Park last week in Montana, and I hiked the High Line Trail.
Oh. And
so I was like, oh, is this the High Line? The heartbeat on the High Line? Because it's like a hike, and it's like, heartbeat, but also like with people or with,
Yeah, that'd be interesting because Taylor's early stuff is all about people in small towns.
Right.
And so this would have a totally different vibe.
And so the whole time I was just wondering, like, has Taylor walked this same trail? I don't know, maybe she has, but she's not referring to the High Line Trail in Glacier National Park. She's definitely referring to High Line in Montana. If for nothing else than the fact that lyrics are split high space line, like it's two words, whereas the High Line Trail, which is a popular hike, so there's a chance she could have been referring to it, it's one word. So.
All right, so now we're getting back to the refrain, so I'm interested to hear how you're going to explain this one.
Well, no, so it's basically like what you were saying. It's just, again, it comes after the chorus each time, so you have to take it in the context of what was said in the chorus, how the chorus changes.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
The refrain says, "And when I felt like I was an old cardigan under someone's bed, you put me on and said I was your favorite."
Right, so it's the same. The refrain doesn't change. The chorus changes in the song. The refrain does not change. It only changes in meaning because the chorus is changing, and it follows the chorus. And as the chorus changes, the meaning of the refrain changes, if that makes sense.
So what's the meaning of this refrain?
I would say it's still pretty similar to the first one because it's still referring to the positive part of the relationship. And so I think it's basically, it's not just a one time you put me on and said I was your favorite, right? Like she's not just referring to the very beginning of the relationship. Like, oh, now like we're together, so you put me on and I was your favorite. But it's like, it's a recurring thing. It's a recurring feeling in a relationship, this feeling that she's referring to. It wasn't just, that first time, when you put me on when, we became official or whatever. That's the only time that I, felt like I was an old cardigan, then you put me on. Like, I think even within a relationship, you can have those feelings. And so, throughout all those times, he said that she was her favorite.
Speaking of All Too Well, this annotation on Genius.com believes that this line is reminiscent of the line in All Too Well that says, "I'm a crumpled up piece of paper lying here," because I remember it all too well. Maybe a crumpled up piece of paper might be tossed aside and forgotten the same way that a cardigan might be forgotten under someone's bed. Right.
And again, that makes sense. There's going to be a lot, as we already mentioned, there's a lot of similarities to All Too Well because the songs are both referencing relationships. They're both referencing the full life cycle of a relationship that starts well but has that, downfall in it.
True.
And so, there's going to be similarities.
Then we get the bridge, and we all know that Taylor loves a bridge. Betty says, "To kiss in cars and downtown bars was all we needed. You drew stars around my scars, but now I'm bleeding." So earlier, when the relationship was going well, we were getting innocent and young images, such as playing hide and seek. Now we're getting grown-up images, such as kissing in downtown bars.
Right, that's where I was confused. Like, do they have fake IDs in high school? Like, that seems a little unlikely.
Do we know they're in high school?
I'm pretty sure they're in high school. Yeah, because in Betty, he says, Betty, I don't know why you switched your homeroom, but I think it's because of me. Like, you don't have homeroom in college.
Right.
So they're definitely in high school.
So maybe they do have fake IDs.
But, I mean, kissing in cars, that's definitely something that happens in high school.
Don't have to be 21
kissing
for that.
in downtown bars. I mean, I guess you don't have to be 21 to be in certain bars, right? Like, at the bar area, you would.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you could be at a booth, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, makes more sense that you'd be kissing there than at the bar. That would be kind of weird.
True.
So, yeah.
I mean, I'm not a fan of kissing in public at all, but...
fair enough.
Maybe I'm just a prude.
But no, this is all... maybe you are. This also reflects the innocence of high school, even though, there's a lot of non-innocence in high school, as the song is... as the song is mentioning, but there's also innocence in the sense that, the kissing cars in downtown bars, just kissing even in public was all we needed. Like, that was special. That was enough.
That was a once in 20 lifetimes feeling.
Right, exactly. That's something that maybe, she's now looking back 20 years later, realizing, oh, that does get old. Or, oh, that's, ultimately that's not enough, right? It's not just physical, you need that emotional connection or whatever. And that's where, the next line says, "You drew stars around my scars, but now I'm bleeding." So it wasn't just purely physical, right?
Right.
You did, in some ways redeem, my scars from past relationships. And then we get that, again, reminder that this is looking at 20 years later, but now I'm bleeding. And so that's interesting where she says, now I'm bleeding, but not like now, but then I ended up bleeding. That's not very that doesn't flow lyrically well, but you see what I'm saying? She's saying now I'm bleeding in the present tense from 20 years later. Like, is she still feeling the pain of this breakup? Or is it more just like, now I'm bleeding in the sense that, oh, it did end?
Yeah, my first inclination would be that she's, even though she is speaking in the present tense, it's meant to be, I'm bleeding. I would assume that that's after the relationship, but not 20 years
like
after.
She's over it now.
Yeah. Because otherwise that would be a little extreme to be 20 years out and still bleeding over this. This line, "You drew stars around my scars," that reminds me of that... I just looked it up here. It's called kintsugi.
Never heard of it.
I might be pronouncing that wrong. But it's the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery by mending the areas with gold. So those cracks are lined with gold, and the flaws in them are accentuated, and they're worth more than the surrounding bowl. Maybe one might get a tattoo around a scar to make it look better. To turn a negative into a positive.
Yeah, and it's a nice sounding play on words. I think this is what Taylor turned her... Every time she releases an album, she makes her social media profiles say a lyric from the album, and this is what she chose. Her Twitter bio is, "You drew stars around my scars."
Yeah, and this was also something that she mentioned in her initial post about the album. She said, there were these images that popped into my mind, stars around scars, or an old cardigan under someone's bed, and then she named a couple other things that appear throughout the album. So this was one of the key sparks of this album.
Mm-hmm. And this line, "But now I'm bleeding," is actually the transition into, this is the first. I mean, if it wasn't clear already from, some of the earlier lines, this is where she makes it clear. This isn't just a perfect love story. But now I'm bleeding in this bridge, and then it transitions into the chorus again with slight changes, and this is where we see it turn dark.
Yes. So this iteration of the chorus says the following: "'Cause I knew you, steppin' on the last train, marked me like a blood stain. I knew you, tried to change the ending, Peter losing Wendy. I knew you, leavin' like a father, running like water. And when you are young, they assume you know nothing." So
this to me is where the song picks up musically too. It kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. It doesn't like go up an octave, but like there's something to like
just more
increase
energy.
The intensity. Yeah, there's more energy. And this is where the image is just boom, 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 back to back to back to back. Like very vivid, very well written. Like this to me is like the heart of the album, in my opinion. And it starts with, "I knew you, stepping on the last train, marked me like a blood stain." So like leaving at the last minute, stepping on the last train. And that reminded me of, she talks about leaving on a train in Sad, Beautiful, Tragic.
Yes.
And that's also in the folklore, in the Cardigan footnotes, she uses the phrase "sad, beautiful, tragic."
I did notice that.
So I think that was an intentional connection. And "marked me like a blood stain." Again, like, a mark of pain that doesn't go away, right? The lingering sense of loss, in a sense.
Yeah, she goes on, tried to change the ending because, as we talked about, she said, "When you're young, they assume you know nothing," but she knew you. She knew that this was going to end in tragedy, but she tried to change the ending. Like Peter losing Wendy. She didn't want to grow up.
So if we think back to Peter Pan in Neverland, never growing up, Wendy comes, visits Peter, wants her to stay, but she goes back and grows up. And so, this is, Betty looking back in that time, wanted to keep that never growing up innocence of, all we needed was kissing in cars in downtown bars. Tried to change the ending. She knew that they had to grow up. She tried to change it, but she couldn't. Just like Peter lost Wendy.
She says, "I knew you, leaving like a father." So that's not Taylor's experience, but maybe it is Betty's experience.
Right. Yeah. So this is where, we know Taylor's father didn't leave.
But of course, leaving like a father would be a detrimental thing to
I think
a young person's...
it's something. So it kind of shows, right. And again, from Betty's perspective, maybe in Taylor's mind, Betty's father was an absent father.
Could be.
We don't know. But I think it also goes to show the significance of the relationship.
Right.
That you do, especially in high school, that you put on these kind of relationships. You think it's like the most important thing in the world, right? So when someone leaves, it is like a father leaving. That might be a little extreme, but to a high schooler, it all feels this, like being abandoned. It still feels the same.
To a high schooler, everything is the most extreme it can be. Everything is life and death.
Yeah.
Running like water. I didn't have anything to say there.
Well, it's like running water. It's just like a play on words to rhyme with father. I like the phrase leaving like a father, running like water. It has a little bit of rhyme.
Yeah.
Just like how water runs, it's there and it's gone.
Right.
Basically.
And just like she can't stop herself from growing up. Wendy has to grow up. The water continues. You can't stop the water.
I'm surprised she didn't make a mention of the passage of time. She kind of does in the entire song.
Oh, she definitely did.
But it's not explicit. But like the running like water is very clearly about how water, river just flows. There's nothing stopping it. Right. And I know obviously the passage of time is basically the theme of this song.
Right, going from hide and seek to downtown bars.
Right. But it's not mentioned explicitly as like this image, running like water. So.
And when you are young, they assume you know nothing. Verse 3, "But I knew you'd linger like a tattooed kiss." So already, she knows how this is going to end. She knows they're going to break up, and she knows that when they break up, he's going to linger in her mind.
Right. I love this image. You linger like a tattoo kiss. You get the idea of tattoos being permanent. Their relationship, you think it's permanent. Oh, he leaves. You try to get, you can try and get a tattoo removed, but there's still going to be something there. It's still going to linger. at the end of the day, it's not going to ever be completely removed. You can't go back to the way it was before.
Right. Next line, I knew you'd haunt all of my what ifs. This begs back to the one. If one thing had been different, would everything be different? So Betty's going back through all these what ifs because as she has so much time to think about this relationship that's now over, she's going to go through every possible scenario that may have made it last longer. The smell of smoke would hang around this long because I knew everything when I was young. What a turnaround there. They say, or when you're young, they assume you know nothing, but I knew everything when I was young.
Right. So, maybe there are these things about the world that she didn't know yet. Those things from the first verse. But she knew how this relationship was going to go. Yeah, and this isn't the first time that Taylor has written a song about someone who knew, the relationship wasn't going to necessarily have a happy ending. If you think back to 1989, Wildest Dreams, it's literally the beginning. She said, let's get out of this town, drive out of the city, away from the crowds. I thought heaven can't help me now. Nothing lasts forever, but this is going to take me down. He's so tall and handsome as hell. He's so bad, but he does it so well. I can see the end as it begins.
Oh, yes.
My one condition is. Right, so you literally know it's going to end. And so it's a similar, it's a different song, but similar type of theme here, where she did know everything when she was young. She knew going into the relationship that there were going to be these hard moments, that this was going to happen, that the smell of smoke would hang around this long, that he would linger, that she would get invested, even though she knew it was going to end, that she still would get attached, she still would get invested, he would leave, and she would, be suffering because of it, even though she knew that it was going to end in pain.
Right.
That it still happened.
Another example, I knew you were trouble. She knows the relationship is going to end terribly, but she enters the relationship anyway. Betty goes on. So she says, I knew everything when I was young. I knew I'd curse you for the longest time, chasing shadows in the grocery line. I knew you'd miss me when the thrill expired, and you'd be standing in my front porch light. So first of all, chasing shadows in the grocery line, that again reminds me of the one when she thinks she sees him at the gas station or something.
The bus stop.
Similarly, chasing shadows in the grocery line, maybe she sees him, she thought she saw him ahead of her at the grocery store, but it wasn't him. She says, I knew you'd miss me when the thrill expired. So I think she's saying, I knew you would leave me when we were done with this honeymoon phase. And you'd be standing on my front porch light. Right.
So she knew that he would miss once that honeymoon phase expired. Again, it's a high school boy. He's going to move on to the next thing. But then she also knew what they had was real enough that once that honeymoon phase expired, he would come back to her. Right. And
which he does.
Right. He'd be standing there in her front porch light, which is described in Betty. Would you kiss me in front of all your stupid friends?
Yep.
Again, that's definitely high school, not college. Right, and then we get in, and I knew you'd come back to me, you'd come back to me, and you'd come back to me. I knew you'd come back to me.
Wow.
So she could see it all from the beginning, how it was going to go.
Huh. And that's interesting because that's not in the music video. This idea of him coming back is not in Cardigan.
No, it is. It is.
Well, it's because the end is her getting over it, right?
No, well, the end of the music video is, she's in that ocean, right? And she finds her way into the piano and then climbs back into where she started
into the attic.
And gets the cardigan back on. So it is him coming back. She puts the cardigan on at the end of the music video.
Okay. I guess, so before we talked about this just now, I was thinking you'd come back to me is her getting back to herself. Like the old Betty would come back to her.
No. It's literally about James coming back and standing there in the front porch light. I knew you'd come back. Even after, you can picture that August that slipped away like a bottle of wine. James with the unnamed third person in this love triangle.
August girl.
Betty sitting there in her garden and knows that he'll come back eventually. And this is, again, where the great mystery comes up of this love triangle, these songs. Okay, he came back. Did you take him back?
Right.
Did you allow yourself to go through this again? Or not? It's not clear. And in Betty, it's not clear. It just ends with him finally going up to her door and apologizing. And he's like, will it be better? That question's never answered. Here, and you'd come back to me. well, we don't know if she took them back.
Yeah,
it's an unknown. We don't know.
Huh. Yeah, when we talk about Betty, I'll have some thoughts on that.
But then we get into the refrain again,
Betty.
and so this is where the refrain most changes.
Okay, yes, tell me this. So, to review, the refrain says, "And when I felt like I was an old cardigan under someone's bed, you put me on and said I was your favorite."
So in a sense, it's like a repeat of, when they get together in the first place, him leaving her for someone else is going to make her feel like an old cardigan under someone's bed.
Yes.
Like, just used, tossed behind, onto the next newer cardigan, next new girl. And then now him coming back is, and saying, "Oh, I missed you. Like, I don't know anything. I'm only 17, but I know I miss you," is to her, being like that old cardigan getting picked up and being put on and said that it's his favorite, that she's her favorite, or she's his favorite by, him ultimately choosing her over this other fling or whatever. And so, she can have that feeling. Oh, now she's, again, gets that redeemed feeling of no longer feeling like the old cardigan under someone's bed. But does it turn into anything real? It's not clear.
We may never know, Swifties.
We may never know. I mean,
until Folklore 2.
Yeah. I mean, my theory is she learned her lesson, but it's high school, so probably not.
Yeah, my theory is that they get back together, and I'm basing that off of Betty, so I'll save that analysis until I get there.
So you think there's evidence in Betty to say that they end up again back together?
Yes.
Okay, we'll have to. I mean, we're a long way away from
Betty.
Yeah,
we'll get there in
that'll be a while.
8 weeks or possibly
More
8 months by Natty's
8 weeks.
schedule.
That's like 12 songs from now. You're assuming we're doing 2 a week. We ain't doing 2 a week.
Anything else before I get to what I really want to talk about, which is our reviews?
No, I don't. I guess I have nothing really to say. I probably do. I just can't think of anything right now.
And the beauty of this album is if we forget anything here, we can definitely bring it up in the later songs because they're all going to tie back to this anyway.
We have 2 more chances to talk about this song.
Yeah, so no pressure.
Yeah.
This review was left by somebody with the username Nathan and Mindy. So I guess it's one of those couple accounts. So it's probably like an old person on Facebook.
I mean, it has to be based on what they wanted to listen about.
So this person says the title of your review is Not What I Expected, 2 stars. When I heard there was a popular podcast about Swift, I was elated. I was expecting it to provide an in-depth analysis on the life and work of Jonathan Swift and his 17th century English societal commentary, Gulliver's Travels. Or perhaps a rigorous review of his remarks on Irish subjugation in A Modest Proposal. I'm saddened that the influence of the clearly more monumental Swift seems to be continually waning. +1 star for these 2 being funny, though. So he did like our podcast, or they did, since it's Nathan and
So
Nathan.
they thought we were funny, and they thought that our podcast was popular, which was nice. Then they leave us 2 stars out of 5.
Yeah, so Swifties...
Because we're not talking about Jonathan Swift.
Swifties, we will need you to leave us a 5-star review to balance that out because it did take down our average a little bit.
So someone did leave a new 5-star review, and they said London Boy is overrated.
This person, Swift Boys fan forever, wrote London Boy is overrated, but this podcast isn't. 5 stars.
Yep, I agree with that. Both
thank you very much.
Yeah, and then also a reminder: follow us on Instagram at Swift Boys, Tumblr Swift Boys Podcast. You can comment, leave us DMs or whatever there. We also have an email, which we're kind of checking now. Swift,
we check it every month or so.
Yeah, swiftboyspodcast@gmail.com. We got super nice fan email from Miriam in Iran. So sorry, she sent this on August 2nd. So sorry, we didn't see it until 2 weeks later.
Just now reading.
Don't think that we've been ignoring you. Because there's been an episode or 2 since.
Right.
But let's just say, Miriam, I really appreciated your email. I'm glad that your favorite album is also read and that your favorite song is also All Too Well. We seem to be on a lot of the same pages.
But she likes London Boy, so...
well, but not as much as you.
Well, that'd be pretty hard to do. Well, Swifties, that's it for us. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, smash that follow button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our Twitch, subscribe to our Twitter, subscribe to Apple Pods, leave us a 5-star review. No more of this 2-star stuff from Nathan and Mindy. Not interested. Take it back. Undo the review. Give us 5 stars. This podcast is about Taylor Swift, not Jonathan Swift. It is what it is. And, Swifties, reach out. Comments, questions, concerns. Otherwise, we'll see you back next week.
See ya.